Hi, I'm Julia Bruton. This is about We Are Woman, a podcast exploring female and new aspects on the topic of VR.
Hello, everyone, to another episode of We Are Woman. I'm sitting here with Natasha Greenhalgh. Natasha, I'm in Amsterdam today at the Next Museum, and I realized it's very close to Central Station, actually. I just took the ferry and had one bus stop, and that's it.
I'm really glad you mentioned that. So it's easy for everyone to come and visit. Yeah, very, very close. Or a little trip over the water on a free ferry that takes 2 minutes to see the city.
Exactly. So, Next Museum. Before we dive into what it actually is and why you're doing it, at the beginning of the show, we always speak a little bit about the background of the guests. Can you tell us what made you do the Next Museum in the beginning? What is your background?
Yeah, so I studied at Chelsea Art College, which is an art university in London, and I studied spatial design and very much looking at the way that we create spaces to unite people or to tell stories. And that's what spatial design ultimately is to me. And spatial design can be anything from the design of a building, but also to how you design the interior, or how do you flow people through a space, and what is that experience of traveling through a space. And what I'm personally very interested in is how spaces can be used to empower us, marginalize us, bring us together, make us feel inspired, make us feel safe, but also how spaces can kind of hinder us and kind of make us scared. So my background prior to Next Museum was spatial design, and I worked with also a lot of brands, creating brand experiences through space. It was also at the time when the term omnichannel was this big buzzword, and what that basically was looking at is how do you start to link online experiences and online worlds with physical, predominantly for me, retail spaces. So if you're telling a story through selling product online, how does that link physically in a store? And how do you kind of create a synchronicity between the online space and the physical retail space? So that was then what I was doing for the past 10 years prior to Next Museum. I was in Amsterdam. I've been in Amsterdam now for 9 years, unbelievably. Originally from London. And I had the honor of, my business partner, Merel. We met originally at, kind of a funny story, at the gym. A company we both once worked at had this incredible gym. And we were both needing to blow off extra steam. And we were always in the gym. And she tells the story that she's quite competitive, and that she used to apparently run on the treadmill next to me, want to beat me. So we knew each other via the gym, and then we bumped into each other one day in a bar, and then kind of the rest is history from there. And ultimately, the goal of Next Museum is to create a dedicated home for new media art. So a space where we can really focus on today's creators and makers, and really focus on those that are practicing today using the most cutting edge creative tools or new forms of creative expression, but not just new modern tools and technologies, but also focusing on contemporary subjects and themes. So what's preoccupying society and, us today. That's kind of a snapshot from university to now.
Wonderful. And just a really kind of short in the box answer also to the question how you started Next Museum. So it is basically a female-led adventure that you're doing here. And I've just been through the exhibition. And first information to our listeners, it has not at the moment a specific VR installation, but that doesn't matter because what I thought a lot about while I was walking through it, and also what you said now, that at the start it's that spatial experience. I'm not going to spill a lot of beans, but I can definitely say there were moments when I went through the exhibition where I really thought of myself as being physical in the room, and it did something with me. And I would love to hear a little bit more about the process in terms of how you started this current exhibition with the ideas that you have about spatial work, how you found the artists, and how you created that walk around in the exhibition.
Okay, where to start dissecting that question? So I think ultimately the focus for us at Next is to have a dedicated physical space for new media. And maybe it's good to give a little bit of context that new media art is a huge range of mediums. And VR is, yes, one of them, but the genre is very broad. And the genre also the mediums also keep changing over time because the technologies change. So in the 80s, new media, sorry to give a little art history, but I think it's good to anchor a little bit of context.
Get more information.
So in the 80s or prior, I mean, we went from kind of photography to film. These were kind of becoming new medias. Also at the time were often rejected by more traditional institutions or traditional artists. We then kind of saw the rise of film, of video. We then moved into now a world where we are working with virtual reality, artificial intelligence, the latest buzzword, blockchain technologies, but there's also physical elements as well. So, for example, 3D printed sculpture. We also work a lot with robotics or 3D projection or animations. So it's a really broad genre. And while a lot of these elements can be digital or can be online or kind of maybe more engaged with on a one-to-one basis. So, for example, myself in my headset at home, what we wanted to do at Next is have a physical place to unite and combine these technologies and these experiences. The reason being is that we are firm believers that having a dedicated home, a physical home for these, is the best way to make them more approachable, to help to try and make them more understandable, hopefully inspire people. And I believe personally that we are still human beings. We're human entities with human senses. And that then if you're able to engage with those multiple senses, especially collaboratively, and by that I mean with other physical human beings, it has a particularly profound impact. So we really wanted to have a physical space where you can engage, yes, with these digital technologies. And in a way, especially for us at Next, that is very physical. So I'm glad you said that when you came to the museum, it did have a physical effect on you, because as you heard me say, we are really obsessed with engaging all the senses, because that's what evokes the emotion. If you evoke the emotion, hopefully then you can inspire people to want to engage further, maybe develop their own practice, maybe start to question the way certain technologies are maybe also used. So to be a little bit more critical and mindful also of the technologies in the artwork. So yes, having a physical impact and a physical experience is at the heart also of the way that we curate here at Next Museum. And every single exhibition always starts with a curator, very rigorous, experienced curators. And for this exhibition, that was Bogomir Dolinger. And this exhibition is a solo show looking at the work of Random International, who are an artist collective who have been operating for, I think, going on to 20 years now. And this is the first solo show we've ever done. So for us, that was also very exciting to really study and dive into the practice of one artist or one artist collective. And it was important for us in this exhibition, well, the reason that we chose to do that at Random International is because they have been practicing for so long and they work with such a range of creators and makers. So the studio is formed of Hannes and Flo, but they work with such a diverse team of computer programmers, engineers, software developers, dramaturgists. They also work with so many scientists, psychologists. And the way that Bogomir curated the exhibition, so kind of the red thread, you could say, through the exhibition is when he was diving into their work and their studies, he found that quite a few years ago, they started these very intimate dinners in their studios. And the idea from Hannes at the time, one of the founders of Random International, was to have these very informal, casual dinners where he'd invite great thinkers around a table to discuss different political or scientific developments that were happening at the time, or psychological developments, and just share knowledge. So they would host these dinners and they would have kind of, for example, a risotto dinner one night and bring all these different amazing thinkers together. And then out of these dinners and out of these conversations, they started to develop these different lines of inquiry, which then started to form the artworks that they started to develop themselves. So all of their works are really embedded in a lot of scientific study and a lot of scientific research or psychological research, and they're always really diving in a lot into human behavior. And through this exhibition, what it really starts to unpack as you flow through is that what we're really analyzing through this show is what does it mean to be human today, especially in a world that's becoming increasingly technological. I mean, now we're seeing more and more advances in artificial intelligence. People are also, more scared of it than ever. But what's very interesting is artificial intelligence is a topic that Random International have actually been working with for many, many years. It's just that the way that we're framing it now has become very different. So yeah, in a nutshell, the exhibition is looking at what does it mean to be human today in a world that is increasingly technological. And the show takes you on a journey through the studies that they have created throughout their lives. So what we try and do in this exhibition is a balance between giving you the scientific research behind the works, so a little bit of context about maybe the scientists or the psychologists that they did the research with, and then space to hopefully get purely physically and emotionally engaged in the artworks themselves.
I just remembered in our pre-talk about the podcast and what could be interesting topics, we also talked about your approach to technology in connection with humanity. And you said that's very important to you, this kind of topic. Why is that important to you?
Because technology is having an ever bigger impact on our lives, and it's integrated in, willingly or not, into every single thing that we do. We now carry devices, well, probably not even in our pockets, but most of us probably even have our phones in our hands all the time. We're using technological devices to teach schools. They're using tablets, etc. And when you're walking down the street, when you're going through the airport, when you're making a phone call, we are constantly being surveilled, tracked and traced. And while we at Next Museum love technology, it's super exciting, it's very innovative, and there's many exciting opportunities with technology, there's also a lot of dangers or challenges that we face living in an increasingly technological world. So what is happening with the information that we are sharing, that we are using, that we are uploading, what is happening to our data, how is all of the information that we're consuming making us feel, what's the impact that that's having on us physically. So if I'm sitting in front of my phone or in front of my laptop, physically my shoulders tend to swoop inwards, my head goes further forward than my neck, my entire posture changes. I kind of compress or collapse into myself rather than, in contrast, standing proud with my shoulders back. It totally changes the way that my body starts to form itself. And then there's a lot of psychological effects of what does it do to consume the amount of information that we're now consuming, or I, for one, walk down the street constantly thinking about the next email I'm going to send, or even sending it right away, and even now convincing myself to keep my phone in my pocket and wait till I've arrived somewhere to send an email away. We are always on. We're constantly sharing information. So I think it's really important that we also try to not just be seduced by technology for the sake of technology, and also start to try and be conscious of what we're using, how we are using it, and why we're using it. So maybe a bit idealistic, but so that we can try to create a world where technology actually empowers people and creates opportunity, as opposed to marginalizes people and continues to make only a select few of very powerful people even more powerful. So I think it's really important that we find a way to make technology also feel maybe less daunting for those that it's quite daunting, more approachable, more understandable. And that can be in, for example, the language that's used around technology, not using lots of jargon. For example, when we saw the big rise in blockchain technologies, NFTs, that went into the big metaverse hype, there were so many buzzwords. There was such in-term languages that were being used that instantly a whole section of society were totally kind of pushed out of the conversation. It's the same for a lot of people in financials, right? So how can we also kind of try to break through a lot of that and make it discourse that a wider group of people feel they can be part of, so they can understand, so they can be involved, so that they can also be informed about the decisions that are being made, also that they can try and kind of empower the right decisions to be made in legal processes. So I think making technology more approachable, and also maybe bringing in maybe something we spoke about before, but the softer side of technology as well, maybe the more female side of technology. It doesn't have to purely be a kind of a hard engineering IT male persona, which I feel it often can have. But how can we also make it feel inviting for women? How can we make it feel that it is just as much a female tool and opportunity as a masculine opportunity?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I absolutely I agree with you. And what I think is wonderful is that you and your partner, you started Next Museum as this place where that can happen and where people can come. And what was wonderful to see today while I was in the exhibition, it was so many really, really young, like 20-year-old, mostly girls actually, that went through the exhibition. Where for whatever reason, I was like, wow, okay, cool. They're really doing it. They're getting into it. You know, maybe they weren't as patient in some of the rooms, but still they were there and they were, you know, trying to understand what's going on. And that's just a wonderful situation that you've created. Speaking about two women doing this endeavor that you're doing, and you also started in a very difficult time, right? As far as I understood it, it
maybe couldn't have been much harder.
Just shortly before Corona, right?
Oh, yeah, we got the keys for the building on the 1st of January. I believe all the materials to start construction came in on around the 13th of March. Sorry, my dates are a bit wrong. And the next day, basically the day after the materials arrived, the next day the country went into an intelligent lockdown. And none of us obviously knew what that meant at the time. We didn't know how long COVID would last for. But we decided to carry on. And we were super lucky in that we started with a very, very small, very agile team. And we had a group of builders here that were really dedicated, and they just said to us, Miro, Natasha, we really love what you're aiming to do, and don't worry, we will even put mattresses out here in the back if we have to, and we will just make sure that we get this done. So Miro and I every day would just bike over to the museum and just sit in this building site with hot water bottles as the build continued. And then we were lucky enough to open after the first lockdown. But yeah, I mean, after that, I think we had quite a number of lockdowns that we had to do our best to navigate. So that was obviously...
Yeah, amazing that you kind of pulled it through and that it's here and it's standing and it's working.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Very
to
special.
That one. Is there moments or one moment or situations that you can think of where you felt that maybe it is more of a male-dominated area that you're trying to start the contents and the museum in? Meaning, I really don't know what situations I could think of, but maybe in some phases where you pitch the idea to people, would they look at you? But also on the other hand, would you maybe have advantages while being two women who kind of presented this? Because I guess it's not that many women yet out there who do something like you're doing. Do you, maybe have one or two stories to share on that one?
Yeah, many. I think I really believe in the power of Miro and I together as a female force. I actually even get goosebumps. I think that is a big part of being both female, of the way that we have built the team, the company policy, or kind of
philosophy also.
Yeah, the philosophy of how we create the team. And the reason that's so important, I believe, in arts and culture and in something that's focusing on new art and something new and works that are so complex and so multidisciplinary. We believe that collaboration is absolutely key to what makes Next as successful as it is. And personally, females, in my experience, can be more collaborative. I definitely feel that between myself and Miro, It's not about ego and competition. It's about how can we put brain and passion and heart together and create the best that we can create. And I think that mentality and that approach and the compassion that we have is actually what really fuels a lot of creativity and fuels a really strong and healthy working environment, not just, I hope, for the team, but also for the artists. And we get a lot of feedback. It's so heartwarming of after we've done an exhibition or a big dance event where we have kind of people raving in the space for 3 days in a row for Amsterdam Dance Event. We get a lot of feedback of how welcoming and inviting artists and what creators feel that the space is, and how they feel so supported, how they feel so seen, how they really feel this family environment. And also a lot of feedback on how after people have worked at Next, they get really amazing opportunities after. And that focus for us on a really collaborative way of working is at the heart of what we do. And I personally believe that's a lot also to do with maybe female empathy and compassion. And that also for us comes through also contractually. Like when we started setting out new contract templates for artists, we really looked at how can we make these as equal and as fair also for the artists and protect the artists. And we've had feedback from artists on this also, that they've never seen such approachable and fair contracts. So we really kind of put that, practice what we preach in that kind of all the way also through into our legals. So yeah, I think having that maybe more nurturing approach to the team is a big reason of why what we do is so successful, because it just creates and stimulates more passion, more enthusiasm, and ultimately more creative excellence. So that is a really big positive. And I think also actually really looking at strength, what is strength and what is weakness, that I really believe that being compassionate is a strength. Not necessarily being dominant is a strength. So there's different ways of getting things done. And I think our leadership style is perhaps different to maybe a more masculine corporate environment. Well, I know it is. I've also been in those environments. So that's a really a positive one. And yeah, for sure. I mean, when it comes to investments, when it comes to financials, that is, it is predominantly male investors that we are introduced to. And that is something that Merel at the beginning also really had to kind of find a way of how to best navigate that. But she also put a lot of effort into going, okay, but how do we also keep a balance in that? So, for example, one of the investors that she secured is the Entrepreneur of the Year, Female Entrepreneur of the Year in the Netherlands. So really also looking at how can we try to start to better reflect that balance for ourselves. I think we still have some way to go in that. Merel actually has this amazing presentation that she sometimes does, and it's kind of, you know, where should arts and culture go? Where should business go? And there's an image of, well, this is still my investor board, and it is predominantly a table of men. And that is still the reality for sure. And yeah, that can also at times be quite tricky. But I think it's also going, okay, how can we make this work actually to our advantage? And the way that we do that is to be true to the vision and mission of Next, and ultimately that's what drives it through.
Yeah, it definitely seems also that you're two super authentic women who just, you know who they are and where they want to go. And I guess that's the best way to deal with any situation in life. Oh, by the way, I just need to say this shortly to the listeners as we are on location. There might be some sounds this time in the background, but don't worry.
Might be robots being fixed.
What is your impression when we're speaking about female artists in the area that also the Next Museum presents, the immersive new media that you just talked about? Do you feel like more women could get into the fields, start being out there, creative, just going for it? Also in terms of access to any kind of technical basic situation that is needed when, I went through the exhibition, like it can start with a paper and a pencil, but it's definitely moving forward into different areas where I feel sometimes women are a little bit shut off yet. So would you say women come forward and just do it? And do you maybe have an idea how it could be easier for them?
Women should absolutely come forward and do it. I was going to say just do it, but I also appreciate there's really no such thing as just in this context. And what I mean by that is, well, number one, there are so many incredible female new media artists. So many. There is just not necessarily the stage or the platform for them in the scale that there are for men. So it's not about a lack of incredible female artists. It's about reduced or less opportunities for female artists, or how artworks or exhibitions or artists are being curated. So there is a phenomenal pool. What we have also that had experience with, to be really honest, because I think it's something that needs to change, is we have, especially at the beginning, it's different now that we have a physical space set up that we've really tried and tested and we understand it. So we can almost give, for those that want it, we like to also give a totally blank canvas, but we can give some more clear parameters to work with if people need. But what we did notice is it was so much easier to find male artists that could produce very large scale, complex new media art installations. And I want to frame that a little bit because the works at Next Museum are room-size installations. We're talking about maybe 8 meters high by a room that is 10 by 20 meters. So we're talking very, very large scale. We're talking about physical elements, sculptures. We're also talking about sound. So we are talking about very large scale. And we did find it hard to find women that had produced exhibitions or installations previously that were matching this scale and this level of technical complexity. I mean, there were just so many more male artists. So then you just get this obvious cycle that, well, they've done it before, that's lower risk, let's just go with them. But it's not about lack of talent or lack of artists. It's just about lack of opportunities to have a chance to prove that you can do it. And I think that's what Next Museum does, that we show there are so many. I think Amsterdam has one of the highest number of museums per square meters of most capital cities. And there's a huge focus, though, on already established artists and maybe a lot of dead artists. But what we really want to show is that there is so much incredible talent with less established creators, young creators, new media creators. And if you give them access to the technology and access to the space, they will totally and utterly blow your mind. So there is an amazing pool. It's about giving the space and the chance, and maybe just putting in a little bit of extra effort to curate in those artists. But saying that, there is my understanding of what I'm trying to learn a bit more about is through education, there is still quite a gender stereotype in what male, female, or non-binary artists or creators or students are going or focusing on. So I think that is, we do still need to for sure focus on that. And maybe it could also be, for example, for these very big installations, it's high budgets, it's building sites, it's a lot of materials, heavy negotiations, big legal contracts. So they are, unfortunately, and it pains me to say, areas that women are typically not as confident in as men. So that can make it harder, yes. So yeah, there is a very strong pool of incredible talent, but yeah, there are definitely still these areas that are hindering women, whether it's from earlier education or maybe still assumptions or stereotypes of. It's still the same with a woman on a building site. When I was doing architectural design, I'd walk onto a building site and I'm treated incomparably different to everybody else. I'm judged on what I am wearing.
Yeah, I know these moments that you spoke about. So then let's look forward to what Next Museum has up for everyone out there. Thank you so much, Natasha, for taking the time. And everyone out there, please come to Amsterdam. It's a wonderful exhibition at the moment. It's going to change in the future, but it's an amazing museum that you've created here. And Amsterdam is a beautiful city to visit.